know why Discord opened. Okay, so actually we could have also used secant theta. Right? What is the derivative of secant theta? The derivative of secant theta is secant theta tan theta. And is secant theta tan theta multiplying this whole thing? Yes. I mean, I see at least one factor of secant and one factor of tangent. So secant theta tan theta is multiplying the whole thing. Okay, so let's do the translation table for that. I'm doing this because I want to emphasize that, there's not any one answer to these problems. There are usually multiple answers, although some are more of a headache than others. Okay, so originally I had theta equals 0 and theta equals pi over 4. So what are my new numbers? Well, secant of 0 is 1, and secant of pi over 4 is square root 2. So, go back to the original integral. All right, so the tan theta cubed, keep that by itself. The secant squared is just u squared, it looks like. And then the d theta is du over secant theta tan theta. Okay. And the new limits of integration are 1 and root 2. So let's start canceling stuff out. So first of all, I can see that tan theta cubed and tan theta, there's a bit that cancels out there. So that's tan theta squared. Okay. And then I'm left with u squared over secant theta. But this secant theta I can actually replace again with u. Notice how this is actually already slightly different from what we're used to, right? We're used to everything just canceling out with the u substitution. But for this, I actually have to notice that part of what I've translated with the differential actually already contains the original function secant. So I'm actually going to replace that secant theta with another factor of the u, right? Because that's what secant theta is after all. And then I have du. Okay, so this is actually not everything has canceled out, right? We still have this tangent of theta to deal with, right? I need it all in terms of u. How can I write tangent of theta? I mean, I have to somehow get this term, tangent of theta squared, somehow in terms of u, which is secant theta, right? I mean, you cannot proceed with fundamental theorem of calculus until everything is only one variable. Does anyone have an idea of how you might actually do that? Is there a way I can write this in terms of secant theta? Think back to your pre-calculus and trigonometry. Is there some relationship between tangent of theta squared and secant theta? Secant tangent? Well, the derivative of tangent is secant tangent. But I can't do derivatives anymore, right? All the derivatives have been done. So Sahana has said secant squared theta equals 1, I think you meant minus, okay, good. So we have secant squared theta minus 1 equals tangent theta squared. Right, so this is a basic trigonometric identity, that tangent squared theta equals secant squared theta minus 1. And now that's really good for us because now that's written in terms of secant theta, this secant theta I can now write as u. So this is u squared minus 1 times u. And then to do the rest of the problem, I can multiply out and get u cubed minus u. And then finally, I can do fundamental theorem of calculus. So I get 1/4 u to the fourth minus 1/2 u squared. Substitute in 1 and root 2. And let's see what I get. If I substitute root 2, I get 1/4 times 2 squared minus 1/4 times 2. And then when I do minus substituting in 1, I get 1/4 minus 1/2. Right? Make sure you actually write those parentheses. If you have if you have an antiderivative that already itself contains multiple terms that might have a minus sign in it, and then you have to worry about the minus sign coming from the fundamental theorem of calculus, right? I would actually make sure you write these parentheses on both terms so it's very clear you're subtracting top number minus bottom number. And once you do all this arithmetic, you should get the original number, which was 1/4. Right? Because this whole thing right here is a 0, and this is negative 1/4. So you get 0 minus a negative 1/4. Okay. So, I mean, obviously you didn't have to do u equals secant theta. You could have just done the first method, u equals tan theta. Again, I want to emphasize that there's no unique answer to u substitution. There's usually multiple ways you could do the substitution. In this case, obviously the secant theta is probably a bit more of a headache, right? Because you have to do a few things. First of all, you have to remember to convert this secant theta to a u, and then you're left with tangent theta. You have to remember some trigonometric identities. The arithmetic is also a little bit more annoying because of these square root 2's, but I mean, it's doable. Okay, any questions about that problem?